All right, Chapter 3, Operations, Section 1, Basic Principle. Although the military transportation services must be necessity to organize the operative with a somewhat differential, each of the theater basic principle fundamental for each of the transportation are applicable to all the theaters. The complexity of the modern warfare expressed with the logistical terms are such that a failure in any part of the military transportation system may result in the greater failure throughout the whole. Therefore, necessary for the integration of each of the part with all the parts. This precludes the decentralization of the point where either the various forms of transportation for the transportation network separate the area that can be without regard to the requirements of the other forms. Those in the entire system. The transportation services should be served the theater as a whole. Further, the high degree of the flexibility necessary in order transportation the capabilities may be diverted concentrated with the allocated with the strategical, tactical situation demanded. The integration and flexibility required for the best achieved with the establishment of unified control and continuity of the operations. The movement of the troops and equipment supplied for the rear of the forward area, the evacuation and salvage of the forward rear area, the usually, although not always one of the progression, but through the success of separating the states of this fact, and coupled with diverse operational administrative need for the force of the theater, of the revolt and the general policy with the decentralization, operation support, separate commands, such as policy and nearly normally expressed for the effect of the division of the theater into the various territorial area of the detail for the territorial subdivision theater operations. See the F field menu 100F, 110, 105, 110, 115. Necessity of decentralization operation of the theater as a whole with the unified with control community of operation military transportations are not inconsistent with its important power for the transportation service to develop in its own particular pattern of organization based on operational necessity, not merely duplicate and succeed with the territorial of the command of which and serve the true even where special factors in the theater with the paragraph 5 and 18 make the high degree of centralized control over the transportation practical to make. So organizational structures like the operation performed have the essential difference, but they too hold should mutually supporting. Section 2. Alright, Section 2, control. The basic the control regulation via the transportation capacity of its movement, the priority of the movements that are established by the theater command in order to movement that may be taken with the presence of over another. Relationship with these priorities must clearly be defined. Note that all agents covered by applying them establish the priority of the application requirement for the overall through the integrated movement plan and personnel supply movements and conformity, military requirements available facility. The movement of the plane usually made with the theater of the G4 and coordinated with the tactical force of the technical services. The type of the band with the quality of the transportation limiting factor, personal supply movement, the comprehensive transportation plan, which envages the utilization of the total theater stocks, transportation personnel, equipment which was related to the War Department, the ship, the allocation of the theater supply with requirements, the necessary formulation of the plan is usually responsible for the theater chief of the transportation, integration of the continuity of the operation required with the full implementation movement of the personnel and supply throughout the theater in order to priority with which has been assigned. This is in turn dependent upon the control. 22. Methods of control. Control of the transportation of the theater operation may be exercised for the establishment, 1. By the priority of the use of the transportation, including the priority of the restoration of routes. Allocation of equipment. 2. The movement of control. 3. The traffic circulation plan. And 4. The traffic control. Establishment of the priorities to use of the transportation enable the theater of the transportation to regulate the use of the transportation capacity and movements. For they also help to put in the effect of the priority of the movement of the material which have been established within the theater. The applying of the priorities of the movement accomplished in large part of the theater level of the allocation of space for the lifting of the capacity tactical commands of the service to be the theater command who devised the theater chief transportation. Normally, tactical service the chief of the service establish their own priorities. The actual equipment material with the limits of space allotments. C. The movement controls consisting of the scheduling personnel supplying movements for the realize the priority of the movement and established in the theater command, but to utilize the transportation facility equipment must be effective movement and control aimed at distributed with the transportation load available for the arteries. The best advantage at sorts coordinated with these movements with the other movements to prevent conjunctive the application of the movement. The control required for the movement of the control plan. A plan effective with the utilization transportation equipment of the facility to be used for the carrying out the movements of the personnel and supply with the corners with the movement of the plan. The formulation of the movement of the control plan normally function of the theater with the transportation following the establishment of the movement plan, the movement of control plan. It is necessary that they are drawn up for each area involved with the traffic circulation plan. The plan detailed the demand for the transportation network in order to affect the movement control in general. They therefore further break down with the movement control plan with the application of special geographical area under the consideration traffic circulation plan for the main supply routes is only responsible for the theater chief of the transportation, but it is important that the provost marshal, the chief of the engineering consult with the development, traffic control enforcement of the traffic regulations road, rail, air, or waterway disciplines, including spot direction, and should be not confused with the control of the transportation movement control. Effective traffic control requires a traffic control plan with the development of this plan, the establishment and application of the traffic control measure for the normally function of the Navy and Coast Guard in the cases of the offshore waterborne traffic, the provost marshals in case of the highway traffic, the theater air force for the case of the air traffic and traffic of the military railways, inland waterways, and directed under with the theater chief of the transportation. The traffic control enforcement agencies operate the enforcement of the basic policy and vision and the movement of control in the traffic and circulation and plans. 3. Unified control. Control all theater transportation unified within order to serve the perform. The different agencies may be integrated into one flexible system to that, and the theater command's authority is normally exercised by the chief theater chief transportation and applying the priority throughout the designation of the transportation equipment for the movement, establishing and applying with the principle of the movement of control. Further, the theater of the commander normally authorizes the theater chief of the transportation to conduct the direct liaison with the necessary agencies affecting the fulfilling of the transportation minute, the detailed procedure whereby unit of the control is applied, but there may be various considerably according to the organization operational requirements of the theater and continental type of the operation. But the theater chief of the transportation will usually exercise direct operational control over the surface and the large ocean area that he may exercise such control only over the through transportation inter-command and the inter-theater transportation and control of the inter-command transportation being function reserved for the section transportation officer under the section commander with the policy of the unified control of the transportation established issue with the theater command through the command channel of the generally one agency of the office of the theater chief of the transportation is made responsible for achieving the unified control of the transportation with giving them with the compensator authority to regulate the use of all means for the transportation. 24. Single communications. Control of the transportation, either by the broader aspect of the detailed operation, cannot be effected without adequate signal communication between the various staff, division, commands, and agency. The signal communication system utilized by the transportation services must be extensive as flexible with the operation of the service itself. It must be prepared to cope with every emergency and is likely developed and responsible for the theater of the chief of the transportation, coordinate with the chief signal officer of the theater, develop and apply with the plans, establishment, property use of the telephone, telegraph, radio communication, all parts of the transportation service to supplement such communication with the messenger, other type of the message transmittal necessary if they are to provide with the pertinent and temporary stationary mobile signals. Communication facilities will result in loss of the control over the transportation system. This is in turn will result in the failure to meet the needs of the theater. It's responsible for the signal corps to construct and maintain such wire circuit as necessary to train dispatching for the administrative military railways, except that all circuits along the route area are turned over to the administrative military railways, and our same will be maintained and operated with the transportation corps. Section 3. Cooperation, coordination. Cooperation with other military forces of the United States allied with the civilian agencies. Important facts for developing the transportation service of the theater operates the degree with the cooperation needed for the varying, according to the load circumstances in general. However, the greater the degree of the cooperation, the better will the transportation service. In the theater, the type of the degree of the cooperation will be self-determined by the highest staff of the econs, but determined if it can be evenly effective to be the true meaning of the cooperative methods whereby it's achieved and understood at every level made part of the advanced plan. Junior officers, non-commissioned personnel assigned with the duties which require development and cooperation should make the immediate and careful study for the requirements and limiting factors objectives available to means of affecting the assignment. They should, in other words, study not only all aspects of their assignments, those of the function being performed with the person or organization with whom they expect to cooperate, in particular those opposite number of the parallel organization of the Allies. On this basis, consider cooperation the true meaning of collective action for mutual benefit becomes possible and the intention of the higher authority to be accomplished. 26. Coordinated. But the coordinated required for the operation of military transportation service of the theater is achieved as resulting plan cooperation between the organization coordinated with such coordinated with the theater necessary to develop the maximum efficiency of the use of the various forms of the transportation, most effective functions of the service's whole relationship necessary transportation requirements of the theater. Among these specific objectives, the attainment of the preventing of the highway, railport, and inland waterways depot congestion, the effective tabulation of inventories of the military and local transport, the continuing knowledge of the available means of the transport through such inventory is essential. The effective employment of each of the transport with the establishing movement and control of the traffic direction with the principal method whereby coordinated with the transportation is accomplished. Liaisons. When necessary for the purpose of effecting efficient cooperation and coordination with the matters affecting the transportation, liaison staff planning is established between the United States and allied military force, between the United States force and the friendly civilian agency, the theater of the chief of the transportation under the director of the theater command of similar liaisons all various operating levels is usually established under the intermediate immediate direction of the theater chief of the transportation. Section 4, the planning. General planning of the basic transportation plan of the theater. Paragraph 21 should be the simplest one of the will filled with requirements. It must be, however, taken into account with the most extreme situation possible, provided all the contingencies, complete understanding as to all the forms of the transportation capacity, efficient schedule applicable to be each available transportation network capacity, each route which is to be moved, how it is to be moved, and when it is to be moved, and whether from where and where it is to be moved in their area policy, which would affect the plan as needed. The essential considerations to develop on the plan with the efficient utilization of available transportation facilities, flexibility, simplicity, minimum restrictions, alternate plans, necessary communication, secondary and secrecy, and timely issuance of an order and provision of future operations. Railroad, air transportation, highway transportation, pipeline, waterways, ocean shipping, naval transportation all have their own characteristics. It is the blending of efficient characteristics of each of the available for the transportation of the theater requirements to give the for the support of the theater command. This is a major function of the theater chief of the transportation. In fulfilling this section, he must work closely with the theater staff to supply with the services. The operating agency properly advised the planning will, for instance, require the close of the coordinate with the chief engineer of the theater developing the type of the amount of the construction required for the new bases, type of the amount of reconstruction necessary, and the type of the transportation recommended with the support with particular operation. Sound conclusions can be reached after the carefully consideration of both the engineering and the transportation implications. 29. Area plans. The overall plan will be not to break down the detailed plan for each of the areas. The situation will vary from one in which density troop concentration is low. Transportation network, ample danger of the interruption, small of the opposite extreme, the usually massing of the troops look at the good railroad and the good road network together with the danger of their damage if a hostile action made it difficult to maintain supply and troop movements. The type of services performed with included with communication, hauling, and the port clearance for hauling within areas. Each of the type that has its own peculiar problem. The detail plans are normally responsible for the area transportation officer, which coordinated with the requirements of the area commanding with the general transportation plan of the theater. Section 5, utilization, civilian transportation, general, exempt from the most primitive area of the basic military transportation service of the theater operations, existing transportation network of the facilities expanding as may be required to meet the total traffic load available for civilian personnel with some of the prisoner of war may be utilized for the operation maintenance of the transportation which organizes the military transportation. Service of utilization, civilian transportation, military purpose requires and complete integrated with those forms of the transportation. They are purely military and in characteristic. All transportation in theater must be organized in one system, each part of the supplementing of the other, and all directed with the meeting of the theater requirements. Very often they will be found that the civilian forms of transportation territory incorporated within theater were designed and developed to compete with the other forms rather than supplementing them in settlements that existing transportation facilities that follow all economic pattern with the corresponding with the tactical plan. In addition, with the character of military movements involving a large concentrated number of the men and tremendous quantity of the cumbersome heavy equipment and material for which the transportation facility was not designed, to which they are not readily adapted. The integration of such transportation into one complete whole will therefore require improvisation, adaptation, and great flexibility of organization. 32. The factors. Before efficient utilization of civilian transportation theater operation can be effective, several factors must be considered for the advanced planning. Utilization of civilian transportation will continue be in the condition by adequate control inventory for the means of the transportation. B. The character of the transportation network and equipment. C. The extent of the condition of the network and facilities. D. The repair and maintenance facilities. E. The relation of the civil government with the population, minimum transportation need of the civilian population, Secretary of Military Installation, Security Military Installation, equipment and information, the needs of our allies, contract support, transport. Whenever feasible, the military transport services will normally be supplemented with the civilian transportation services contracted by the military forces for the servicing use of the consisting of civil labor and facilities operated by the civil management and controlled by the theater organ chief of the opposite transportation or military equipment operated by the civilian organization under such control. Section 7. Section 6. Evacuation and security. Civilian evacuation. Movement of the civilian traffic in theater of the operation cannot be ignored, and mass evacuation of the civilian population from the combat zone unless properly controlled may result in the complete stop of all military traffic to serve as detriment with the military opposition interference with the evacuee movements of the military traffic can be avoided with the minimized requirement for the effective evacuation take place prior to, during, all little and in all military movement with the military control of all railroad operations requiring the evacuees use the road and trails carrying little or no military traffic, diverting evacuee traffic away from the areas most important for the military operation by using controlled evacuee conveys by forcing evacuee traffic to move with the roadside of the designated area depending on the completion of the military separate movement civilian evacuation non-tactical areas conducted by the provost marshal with the theater chief of the transportation exercising movement control. Our prisoners of war evacuation. The theater chief of the transportation responsible for the transportation of prisoners of war throughout the communication zone of the provost marshal furnished the theater of chief of the transportation with the reports requested for the station stating the number, location of the prisoners of war whom space is desired for evacuation, the number that normally broke down within the general officers and enlisted personnel indicated the numbers of females. Upon receipt of the space for the requirement of the air of the transportation under other concern with notify with the provost marshal where and when and where shipping will be available will coordinate with the movement of the ensure of the port. Evacuation sick and wounded impetus. The medical action is used from the rear units. Evacuate forward units of ambulances are substituted with later add or forward limit of traffic. Hospital lines, hospital trains are substituted with the ambulances at forward limit rail traffic. Is the excavation of the combat zone, the communication zone, all ports of the under the theater traffic. Theater chief of the transportation, the chief of the surgeon of the theater coordinates with the theater chief of the transportation, general plan for the evacuation. The theater chief of the transportation is charged with the transportation of hospital patients, attendants, transportation of patients, baggage, issuance of instruction components, and concerning proper marking thereof. Security. All orders regarding the forward movement of the troops supplied with the secret, in particular with the communicated by the commanding officer. Only those duties required in such information. All transportation corps officers must familiarize themselves with the necessary security measures issued by the proper authority and are responsible for the enforcement thereof. Security of all the supplies is in function with the command with the protection of the government property against all normal hazards rests squarely upon the shoulders of all the officers enlisted and men in the army. To achieve this, the full cooperation established between all the concerned secretary and supplies to prevent avoidable loss of the United States property. Certain theater standards must be maintained. Requirements to meet the order to provide continuous security to such property while loading when loading and while in transition until the delivery of the ultimate control route has been made. Doors, trucks, railroad cars, and hatches and barges and ships may adequately be fastened. Adequate containers, properly packaging, proper documentation must be provided with the proper guarding with the insulators in the facilities such as bridges, tunnels, overpasses, sidings, loading, unloading points, rail lines, communication ports, depots, motor pools, airfields, and pipelines must be assured. In general, responsibility for the security was divided among the section and the commander of the port, with the depot commanded the consigning of the supply of the operating agency, while the transportation personnel and materials such responsibility are usually defined in the theater regulations and instruction issued by the theater chief of the transportation. Or destruction of material. The decision of the destruction of the property and material rests on the army of the theater commander with the responsibility of the unit commander to prepare for the plan for the destruction thoroughly with the train heads, the personnel with the execution order to ensure its success when it's in action as it becomes necessary, the approval method of destruction of each item of the material to be published, and the pertinent field manual or technical manual. This method should be used whenever possible. To obtain order and uniform results throughout the Army. Section 7, Amphibious Operations. Amphibious operation. In the theater of the operation junction action with the ground chief of the Air Force involved in the landing on the hostile shorelines exemplifies the need for the continued unified control of the transportation. In the main, the responsibility of the transportation services are limited to coordinate until the source of the time and landing of each if they have been removed from the chain of the supply and are replaced for the captured and constructed ports. After the asphalt phase of the landing operation, however, the movement of the supporting personnel of the supply may give them many special problems connected with such matter as the rapid orderly unloading of the ship, the craft, direction of the waterborne traffic between the ships and shores, prevention of the congestion of the beaches, and establishment of the dump, the movement in the land of the forward by the very nature of amphibious operations. Such problems is, if not avoided and solved, will seriously adversely affect the success of the expedition. The theater chief of the transportation contributes to the avoidance and solution of these problems prior to embarking on the task force by 1. Establishing liaison and pertinent transportation matter with the task force commander with the commanding officer of the land, sea, and the air force of the expedition, the transportation officer of the landing force, to the shore and party of the commander of the invasion of the beach master, the proper advanced planning to include such matters the calling forward of the ship in order to the priority desired loading of the personal supply within accordance with the wishes of the landing force for the commander, preparation adequate documentation for the means of the procedure for the transfer to the port with the breach operation of the cargo handling from one service to another following the assault phase, allocating necessary transportation equipment, the expedition attaching when required properly trained, equipped ships and shore group, the transportation corps units such as the port, steve, or door companies, the amphibian truck companies, major and medium ports oversee the necessary personnel for the landing of the port person, assigning when required properly trained shipping transportation officers to the vessel of the expedition, exercising movement control over the personnel equipment into and out of the concentration areas of the assembly area of the transition area in order to effect the mounting of the operation in accordance with the desires of the task force commander. 7. Assisting the corps corrective processing troops where to be engaged within the operation, other the equipment to the staging areas within the theater when such areas are under the control of the theater chief of the transportation. 8. Ensuring the correct loading of the troops and supply for the ports of the embarkment with the theater within accordance with the plan made with the conjunction with the landing of the force commandment subject to the stability requirement of the naval commander with which the subport are under control of the theater chief of the transportation. C. The subsequent asphalt phase of the operation, theater chief of the transportation maintains liaison transportation officer for landing forces commander for the matters relating to the movement of the transportation supply ships employed with the building up of the strength of the land force for details of the landing operation on hostile shores. See Field Manual 31.5. Chapter 4. Forms and Methods of Transportation.